go in order of who signed in. So Dorothy Fate, you are up first. And as Dorothy makes her way, this is the worst part of my job, is running this timer for the 5 minutes. Because there's no nice way to say if you come up against that 5 minutes, can you finish up? So, please be kind. I'm going to start it right now.
Dorothy Fate, 742 Hightower Way. I've been a Webster resident since the age of 6, and I've raised 4 children in this town, and I've always cared about this town's growth pattern. However, it has not been until the children were raised and I retired from a career as a probation officer that I've had the time and opportunity to more actively follow, participate, and speak up about my concerns regarding the choices Webster board members made over the years. In years past, I've had to accept that I made the best choice possible when I voted, and I had to hope that those elected were truly guardians of this town, and I needed to trust the direction that they chose for the town. Now I have the time to share my views, follow issues, and not just hope my vote elected the right board members. I challenge you now to remember that there are many residents in Webster that are in the position I was in 30+ years ago. And just because they can't squeeze one more thing into their day does not mean that they are not lamenting the loss of large parcels of wonderful undeveloped fields, woods, and meadows. I would like to share my thoughts on the use of special use permits in zoning. Specifically, the request to grant a permit to the non-conforming mini storage unit, RV storage and U-Haul retail rental business at 959 5 Mile Line Road. The town of Webster has designated that property as low-intensity commercial district, and zoning deserves to be reviewed and approved as an overall town plan. The board has on more than one occasion indicated that piecemeal zoning is not the way they wish to address any zoning issues. I would argue that the issuance of special use permits does exactly that by granting an end around current zoning. If this is an appropriate use for this property, I'd ask the board to direct the developer to apply for a change in the current zoning and not grant this permit. I would ask the board not to bend to development pressure and allow the citizens of this town to have a say in the direction this town is going by participating in the comprehensive plan process. I am willing to face the probability of higher taxes versus suffering the other negative impacts of overdevelopment. And I believe there are a significant number of Webster residents who would agree. I believe that the current zoning is appropriate. It is very close to residential properties along 5 Mile Line Road and Gatewood Lane, and those neighborhoods need to be protected from retail encroachment. This property is ecologically sensitive. Shipbuilders Creek tributaries need to be protected, and granting a commercial building and paved parking area above the recommended lot coverage with a non-permeable surface area endangers this creek. Also, the storage of recreational vehicles, as well as a fleet of rental trucks, could lead to a discharge of gas or oils or other environmentally toxic liquids into this creek's watershed. Everything comes with a cost, and protection of our environment is worth the cost, in this voter's opinion.
Thank you. Dorothy, thank you.
Yeah, girl.
Mike Soloway? And Mike, Dorothy did it in 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Oh,
You don't get her extra. I'll tell you, you can't get her extra minute and 45.
Mike Selway, 752 Page Lane. I'm directly affected by this project, as numerous neighbors are. We've been down this road before with this property. Back around 2010-ish or so, Mr. Coombs wanted to change his property to entire commercial property. There was a backroom deal done. The front portion that is commercial now, and then the rear portion that was left as R3 residential. My particular property, if you look on a plat map, I back up to Route 104, portion of my property. my backyard, the side of my house, my patio and everything else looks directly into the tree farm. By this listing that they have for this property, they're calling it a 4-story building. It's not a 4-story building, it's a 5-story building. Because you have to add mechanicals to the building. That adds additional height and makes it a 5th-story building. That makes it almost 55 feet in height. I will be looking directly at this monstrosity in my backyard, listening to trucks and forklifts going beep, 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 beep when they back up. It's a 24-hour facility in a residential area. It's surrounded on 3 sides with homes, Patty Lane, Gaywood Lane, and 5 Mile Line Road. You're stuffing commercial monstrosities in residential areas, and when is enough enough? This is ridiculous. This isn't mini storage. You could call it what you want, but a 5-story building is not mini. I don't care how you want to sugarcoat it. It's not mini. It's big. Mr. Coons, no offense to him, there's history, like I said, with this property. He had a tax abatement. He paid 80% of the taxes, the rest of the residents paid 20% of his taxes for 15 years. His tax abatement was running out, and all of a sudden, the property went up to go commercial. He came to the town board and asked for it to go commercial. For years, he's been trying to sell that property. He's got a property with a flood zone area in the northeast corner of the property that is in that triangle, 5 Mile Line Road. Where's all that water going? Where's it all going to get directed to? Because I can tell you right now that Runoff Creek on 5 Mile Line Road isn't going to handle it. Okay? It's not going to handle it. There's plenty of other commercial property here in Webster that is vacant and that is for sale, where it would be more conducive for this facility to go. I mean, they can literally go right across the street at Lowe's. The property's for sale over there. Big sign, for sale. Guess what? There's no houses over there. It backs up to the Expressway. Why are we stuffing commercial property into residential areas? Now my price, the value of my home is going to be devalued. When you look out the back door and you see this 5-story building, the developer's going to tell you, no, it's a 4-story building. It's a 5-story building. And then the overuse of special permits for this property, you need one for the second building that's going to have to be built. You're going to need a special permit for it being over a height. And again, the definitions that you use in here, mini storage and self-storage, again, it's not mini storage. Yeah, it's self-storage, but it's a self-storage building. It's not like a 2-story building. It's just like the one that's over on 250 by the railroad tracks in a commercial district. This is an LC2 district. This wasn't designed for that. Not that size.
Remember what I said was the worst part of my job, Mike?
Yeah, I know. Time's up. Okay, don't worry. Dan will give you your full.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. I'm assuming the Dan that's going to give us an earful is next up, Dan Dalton.
Dan Dalton, I'm at 764 Patty Lane. Like Mike, I've got some big, huge pine trees right on the back border, so I might only see the mechanical ones. But let's just hope it doesn't get that far. First, I want to thank the board for giving that the entrance to the West Webster handle, which is next week's agenda. But I really appreciate it. I've been going by there for years. It's a nice one. And what you're doing is to your credit. The second thing here is Mike referred to was quite a bit of discussion 13 years ago on this property, and we had a petition signed by 60 homeowners who are within 50 yards of this property. And it was a valid petition, and those are real people who are solid Webster residents. And they count. They should count for something. And those same 60 people are going to be of the same mind today. What called my attention to this was the notice that said mini storage. I see that the town board can vote no and not refer this to the planning board. And it says right here, you can take no action, right? That was on your handout. And anyways, if you put it to a vote, you can't say they can't vote no. So that would just go back to the owner or the proposal to reconfigure it somehow. I don't think this particular project could ever fit the definitions. The reasons to deny this are, number one, you have it as a mini storage, but in the MC district code, you'll see a paragraph, it's 350-18, and I think it's number 21, page 21. And it says specifically that a self-storage that's climate controlled is in an MC district. So it appears to be a zoning issue. How is that missed? Why is a developer led along a path, and who's the one that led him? I went to the zoning office last week and they didn't know anything about it. You know, I don't know, they said to call me, but how is it that zoning would not have any idea that there's a proposal for a building that should be an MC and is an LC2? Don't know that answer. The reasons Mike said are all good. It's the visual impact is horrible. Noise and flashing lights, height is bad. The soil is most likely contaminated, and when they start shoveling that up, where does that contaminated soil go? In for year. We know that because all tree farms in the country have been using all kinds of pesticides. Otherwise, their trees would be very sparse. So I'm begging you, once it gets to planning, it's too late, because these people have to put more effort and time and design work in. And the planning department might have 2 or 3 meetings, and you might have 2 or 3. It's a lot of wasted time on an issue which shouldn't even get off the start bus. So that's what I say. That's my point, and I hope you vote no. You just send it back and either find another location or find a nice project like, I think, I used to be more with about Outer Mill Office Park, there's a number of beautiful office parks around it, look at it fit into residential. And that may be the answer to this. I know I talked to Mr. Cruz once about a project like that, and he said there's not enough money. So, thanks, Dan. Thank you. That's my alarm going off to say it quick.
All right, Gail?
Yep.
My name is Gail Minder. I live at 357 Gulfview Heights. And actually, with Joshua's letter, my concerns have been somewhat mitigated. I was under the impression that tonight the board would vote on whether to grant a special use permit. So I'm very glad to see that there'll be multiple steps before that can happen. I'm not really opposed to the project. It's a commercial, it's zoned commercial. It's going to be developed commercial eventually. Maybe a mini storage, if it is mini, might be one of the lesser evils to go in there. But my problem is with special use permits. When they're special, they should require very careful consideration. And I'm very glad to see there'll be several hearings. This isn't all going to happen tonight. Special to me means rare. They're not just doled out for the asking. So the letter really helps. Thank you, Josh and Tom, for distributing it. We all remember the lettuce factory. And what happened with the lettuce factory? It went directly to the planning board. It bypassed the zoning board when obviously it was not in keeping with the zoning. So when you grant a special use permit and you bypass the zoning board, send it directly to the planning board, transparency is not there. And I think transparency is important. So that's my talk for tonight. You may hear me again when you have all these special hearings. So thank you.
Thank you. Almost up this time. Levi.
You can skip over me, I was signing in on behalf of our
Oh, okay.
presentation.
All right. Diana.
Can I go last? I want to be a summer receiver. Please.
What did you say? Summer?
Tie it together.
S-U-M-M, no.
You know, like.
A-D.
EPID.
Okay. Fine, yeah, that'd be fine. Bill?
I won't take a lot of your time. This book is just for reading for the most part. My name is Bill Davis. I live at 942 Gatewood Lane. And I'd like to correct some misconceptions. I think I heard somebody say there's residents all around this, to the north, east, west, and south. There are no houses to the north of this project. There are no houses to the east of this project on a 5-mile line. I think if my house is next door to this project, I am the one that would be most affected, impacted, or whatnot. I don't have a very big problem with it. I've been in Webster for 35 some odd years. Realized when I moved in that tree farm would not last forever. Held no illusions about that. In Webster, you sell your souls to get more tax money. Just wanted to say that there does appear to be a bit of issue with variances and concessions that may have to be made. Public service is not always a position of authority, but it is always one of responsibility. And that's responsibility to the code and to the townspeople. Really have no major problems with the design that I've seen laid out. They do have a proposed building B that I'd rather see the loading dock on the north side rather than on the neighbor's side. Other than that, no problem. It will be literally in my backyard. I won't be looking at it through the trees that are in my backyard. But I have no issue with this. I wish Jim the best of luck, and hopefully everybody can work this out to mutual satisfaction. Thank you.
Chris Whitler.
My name's Chris Whitner.
Strickland, 948 Gateway Lane. Be directly affected by this. Building D will probably be within 100 feet of my house. I've lived in this town my whole life. My family is one of the founding families of this town. I've known the Kunzes for my entire life and been friends with them. I was one of the people at the previous meetings 15 years ago that suggested maybe he should be able to break it off and have a front end zone so that it wouldn't be affecting everyone. They wanted to open the cul-de-sac. It just wasn't going to happen. This is primarily the same thing. This does not fit this neighborhood whatsoever. There's a giant self-storage unit that was just built behind Brewster's on Ridge Road. It's not even being built up. Why do we need another one? And the U-Haul portion of this is not just U-Haul rental trucks. I'm under the impression they're going to have the pods, and that building D is going to be for storage of those pods. Plus you have all the maintenance, and someone mentioned the chemicals. What happens with all the chemicals? Where does that runoff go? Into that creek. When they plow the parking lots and salt them in the wintertime, all that salt, where does that all go? Into that creek. Special use permits should be for special use. This is not special use. I agree that he should be able to develop or sell land, have something done there. But this does not fit whatsoever. It's a giant building, all the parking lot. And to just ram it and bypass everything is really ridiculous. So I'm going to, propose that someone else to the board right now and just chip this down and say, go back and find something different to put there. There's plenty of other land in this town that would be suitable for such an operation. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Ken Walton?
Kent Walters, 956 Gatewood Lane. Not completely prepared tonight, but just a couple thoughts that I had. One thing, a couple things I wanted to make sure that were taken into effect. It seems like this project has gotten really big, and lighting in the neighborhood on a 50-plus foot tall building is considered light pollution. And the drainage from our backyards goes right through what's the paved area now. And I just want to make sure that there's consideration to remove that water through there. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Jack?
Denise Jackman at 27 Westover Drive. And my message tonight is, I've been watching you. And I see that you pride yourselves on proclaiming that you're a pro-green space town board. But I can't see that commitment apart from a few trophy-like small parcels of land that have not been built upon. Instead, I see almost a reckless abandon to allow land to be dominated by commercial developers for often unneeded and unwarranted businesses. It is very much wrong. And I shouldn't have to be here tonight. We shouldn't have to be here tonight. You, however, should be doing your jobs with a greater moral authority to protect and serve all residents of Webster, those with voices like mine that I believe you clearly hear tonight, and those that cannot speak for themselves, the wildlife population, who are consistently marginalized, if not completely disregarded, by this board's decision-making 95% of the time in favor of making more money and greed. Resulting from this greed, animals, the silent residents of Webster, are often left without a viable habitat. Once having destroyed their habitat, as this parcel of land up for discussion is known to have wildlife, by allowing or having destroyed their habitat by endless development, you leave them to walk around an existing neighborhood or troll around a parking lot. These are not habitats. You dream of endless economic growth, even in the case of choosing to open this precious parcel of wooded land for yet another storage unit. If this unnecessary addition to Webster is allowed to go through, this will make 3 such businesses within a 2-mile radius. The one behind Brewster's, I bet the paint is not even dry yet, because I live over there. You also have one on North Avenue, as well as the U-Haul truck business, whatever that is. And I would say, how dare you? How dare you continue to champion yourselves as caring for open space preservation when the true evidence of such a claim is nowhere in sight? You as elected officials representing all residents of Webster have a duty and a moral obligation to understand the urgency of an ongoing shrinking habitat dilemma for most of our beautiful wildlife population. Again, I say, you posture yourselves as being on the front lines of protecting open space and thereby protecting animals, yet the politics on display consistently from this board say just the opposite. You keep failing to act on any behalf other than augmenting more money-making opportunities and greed. You are failing this town, but the eyes of Webster residents are upon you. Many of us meet in coffee shops while we're out taking a walk at the post office, and we all lament the same tale, total overdevelopment of Webster. But make no mistake, you are being watched closely. So by me and countless others, and the collapse of these ecosystems and the loss of animal habitats, it's on your watch. But I say in closing, shame on you. Shame on you if you can't find a way to properly oversee and protect all Webster residents, those with a voice and those without.
And that is what makes our democracy ripple alive. I think it's fantastic that you can get up and speak your mind. We live in the greatest country in the world. Ken Corpus, you're next.
Good evening, Ken Corpus, 1464 Grand Meadows Way. And if you don't want to talk about the U-Haul, I can talk about the ambulance stuff, but I don't want to do that either. So, Art, thanks for the sheet, but I think you missed out on a couple of points. I wrote up a comment and sent it in. I think you have it. If you don't, you're here to put it into the record. So, I believe this 24-hour access facility violates the town code for a number of reasons. It's zoned light commercial, and as you know, I own a business in the town. I'm not against businesses coming in. I don't think it's your job to dictate what business can go where, other than if it's qualified for the zoning. This being called a storage unit, but it's going to have a vehicle rental, which is not approved for the district. I'm sorry, my phone's making me go crazy. And so that's one. Number two is the zoning regulations for the district state a maximum height of 35 feet. The proposed height of this is over 4 stories, as already mentioned. So I think that's another one that would prevent this from going through as it's planned. Also, this states that no new commercial development shall employ architectural styling and detail that's consistent with the residential neighbor of the surrounding areas. And I don't think it's going to do that based on what I see, but all I have is a one-dimensional, two-dimensional plan, so. Zoning regulations for this district also restrict the square footage to 5,000 square feet, which was also mentioned in this letter. One building is 13,000 square feet. And I think there's multiple buildings, so you're way over that limit. And the fifth reason, the zoning regulations for this district limit the maximum lot coverage to 20%. And unfortunately, with the document that was online, I can't read the numbers and calculate it, but my eye seems to think that it's well over 20%. So to me, there's 5 things that this plan doesn't meet with the current zoning of light commercial district 2. I don't know how they're going to come back with a plan that meets all 5 of those criteria. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up providing a special use permit. You're going to have the special variance. You're going to have to allow for oversize, and you're going to have to allow for a 4 height. When this could be built in a commercial district and meet all of the requirements necessary, except of course for 3 stories, which are not allowed anywhere in the town to go over 3 stories. And I don't think any building has yet gone over 3 stories. With this building, this project would be better aligned to a commercial district, and where it says newer used motor vehicle, recreational vehicle, trailer, boat, farm, implement, and contractors, equipment sales, service, rental, or repair or rental. So, and if you look at the storage unit on Ridge Road that was built, it's 3 stories high, and it doesn't fit in that area either. It really doesn't. It's a very large building. I don't know how a 4-story building would fit into a residential area. So I realize, tonight is not a public hearing, but I think you have an opportunity to stop this project here and prevent it from going through more meetings, costing the town more time and energy, and the builders to, go through a lot of work to try to meet those 5 things that have to be changed in order for it to be built. All right? Thank you.
Thanks,
Hope you
Ken.
had a good Christmas and a good New Year. And I'm sure I'll see you again.
Thank you.
Well, guess what? Number 10 is the summative. Summative? Second? I like it.
Summarize it.
Summarizer, thank you, Eddie. Okay, right, I will try my best to keep to 5 minutes. So clearly, I think, by the attendance that we've got tonight and the attention that this has been receiving, this is obviously an emotional issue, and Tom, like you, I think facts are important. So, I'm going to start just by summing up some of the facts tonight. Number 1, I think it was mentioned, this is a use which is in the zoning of a different zoning district. So that makes me uneasy. I find that problematic. It also obviously worries me, the tractor-trailer feature that is very close to our house, okay? Seeing the site plan, it gave a very different picture to me than what the project was initially presented to me as, which was, a self-storage facility that would be sort of minimal traffic, minimal impact, something which kind of fits in the zoning. So even though it's greater than 5,000 feet, it's generally still self-storage. If we look at the site plan though, it seems, and this is hard for me because, like my father, I am close to Jim, and I want him to get a project that works. I want him to get money for his land. I am not opposed to the development of this land, even though I have to live right next to it. And that's why I haven't been out, front on this and fighting it. I've been in a really unusual position. Usually I'm like the charger in my group. I've been the one trying to find silver linings and tell people, listen, this guy needs to get money for his land. If it wasn't this, it would be something else. But I'm torn morally because the more I look at the site plan and the more I look at the project, those features, it feels like we're trying to square a circle here. So yes, I would echo what Ken Corpus says. If there's a way that the developer can modify the project and modify the use so that it actually does fit into LC2, that would be ideal. To come back to the special use permit issue, if you do look at Chapter 269 of the Town Code, there are several aspects of the special use permit which specify when one should be used and when one shouldn't. And so that is another aspect of this project which makes it one that, were it anybody else but my neighbor Jim, I would be fighting it on principle and I would be saying this is wrong. We shouldn't be using a special use permit to push this through when there are these aspects that make it outside of what the code is intending a special use permit to be for. I think that it's something that gives the town leverage on this issue. I think that this is something that should be modified by the developer so that it can go through and that it can fit the zoning, if that's even possible. I would hope it is. You know, the massiveness of that self-storage building, if it's just self-storage, fine. Are there any, you know, again, I don't know, I'm not a developer, but are there any ways that they can mitigate the project in terms of reducing the non-permeable surface area? Can they increase the bufferage on all sides? Can they ensure that there are specific features within that buffer area where the native vegetation will be in place? Can they make it more than 50 feet on all sides, not just my side? Can they make it so that the deer can get around to 4 Mile Creek? I've grown up next to this property. I have an emotional connection to it, but I also have an emotional connection to my neighbor. I was talking to my cousin earlier because I was helping him with the college application. We talked about love thy neighbor as thyself. So it's difficult for me to even get up here and say these are aspects that I'm finding problematic, but I wouldn't be true to my own conscience if I didn't say that I don't believe that it's right for a special use permit to be approved with these existing characteristics that make it inappropriate. Those characteristics need to be first mitigated and modified before this goes through. And the town has that option. It doesn't have to go straight to the planning board at this stage. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Deb.
you for the succulent. $1. All right. Problems are solved. I'll buy it.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna guess that Levi and the crew want to show something about this project. That is the end of the open report. We are now on to consideration of this resolution to refer it to the planning board. The town board needs to get some more education.
Good evening. Thank you, Supervisor and town board members. My name is Mike Ritchie from Hostage Engineering, representing the applicant on this project. Also with me are Tom Palmero and Levi Parmier, from Americo and U-Haul. They can respond to make more technical operations type questions, but I'll just briefly kind of go into a summary of this project. We are here before this board requesting a special use permit. Although self-storage is a permitted use within the LC2 district, any structure over 5,000 square feet requires a special use permit, which is why we're here. We understand that this is a long process. This is not the end, but just the beginning. The concept plan that we have prepared, I shouldn't say we, Americo has prepared, is the ideal layout for their operations. We understand that there's going to be a lot of discussion with the town and residents and boards regarding specific details. For example, one of the issues that I heard the residents discuss about was traffic. I believe that this use is a very low traffic generator. In fact, in your application materials, Americo provided trip generations based on the numerous sites they have across the country. Their average daily trips to a U-Haul center is 31 trips on a weekday and 53 on a weekend. Now compare that to other permitted uses that could be built in this district, say a restaurant or potentially a gas station, given a special use permit, that could be in excess of hundreds if not thousands of trips on a day. So in terms of the impact to the neighborhood from a traffic standpoint, I believe this is probably the lowest impact that you can see be built here. In terms of the setbacks and how the site is laid out, we have shown the plan meeting all applicable setbacks and it meets all buffers. We do understand that we will have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a height variance as well as a use variance for the rental of vehicles. That's a few steps down the road. We do have a wetland that is in the site, which has been delineated and will not be disturbed by this project. There is an area of floodplain, that will be impacted by the parking lot, which will be mitigated per the rules, per FEMA, with proper compensation. We will also provide stormwater management, landscaping, to meet the state's rules. And there also will be improvements to the existing traffic signal where all traffic will be forced to go through the existing traffic signal for the Lowe's. So there won't be any traffic, near the residential homes. I know some of the residents discussed their concern for how close this would be to some of their properties, and I looked it up briefly while I was sitting there. This property will be subdivided at actually the LC2 and residential district line. So the proposed location of the building, will be plus or minus 500 feet to the nearest structure on Peggy Lane and approximately 200 feet to the closest house on Gateway Lane. We understand any development is going to cause concern to the neighbors, so we're here to be good applicants, to work with the residents, to work with the town, to come forward with a project that I think everybody can be proud of. So I know this isn't really a Q&A with the town board, but be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Mike, I wouldn't need the podium just yet.
Sure.
So earlier in the meeting, I handed out a one-page kind of summary that Josh Artuso put together. Kind of succinctly put down what, on one page, what this process would be. And Gail Bender was the one person who said, boy, she was glad she read that because she thought that we were issuing a special use permit tonight, which we're not.
Right. We're just asking that this be referred to the planning board to really get into the process, because right now it's a concept plan. The town really hasn't had a chance to even thoroughly review it. And we feel a lot of the details that I think the residents have spoken to will be sorted out through that process.
And I hope it comes through on that one page that there'd be at least a couple of public hearings if the town board does refer this on. It would definitely have to go to the zoning board of appeals for at least two things, because you said, yeah, thank you, Charlie. You have the variance in height. What was the other thing?
Well, it was two areas. It was 5,000
Area,
square
right.
feet and the stories and then the
Stories.
use variance.
Right,
It's not
right.
the use.
So Charlie, let me ask you this. I said you're going to be doing some lawyering tonight, okay? Would you agree with the bold statements on the one-page handout that the town code requires that the application at this stage should go to the town board for an initial review? The town board to take one of the following actions: take no action, request that the applicant modify the application and resubmit, or refer the application for review to the planning board and start the process.
Yeah, so that's correct. That's right.
Sketch review
That's
plan.
right out of 26919.
Okay. Does any of the board members have any questions for Mike?
Yes, I do. Before we get into, I don't have any questions regarding the code. I reviewed the code. I reviewed all the documents. I've read everyone's posts on social media. I've listened to everyone here. Thank you very much for showing up and coming in today. I guess I had a couple questions regarding the short environmental assessment for Part 1 project information. Under number 2 says, the question is, does the proposed action require a permit, approval, or funding from any other government agency? And I believe it does require a special use permit, and you wrote no on that. So I was just curious about that. And under number 5, is the proposed action a permitted use under the zoning? And you checked not applicable on that, so I was wondering why that was checked not applicable. Is the proposed action consistent with the predominant character of the existing built natural landscape? And you said yes. I would tend to disagree with that. Will the proposed action result in a substantial increase in the traffic above the present levels? You said no. My question is, have you done a traffic study? Do you plan on doing a traffic study? I know you alluded to other U-Hauls across the country, but do you have a traffic study done for this area?
We have not prepared a traffic study for this project at this point. If the board wishes to see it, you know, we could work through that. Traditionally, the first step is the ITE manual. The traffic manual has a lot of guidelines based on similar uses, and that kind of sets a threshold. The typical threshold for whether or not a traffic impact study is warranted is plus or minus 100 vehicles in a peak hour. I think we can show to this board and other boards that you're going to be looking at a peak hour, maybe at 10 or 12 vehicles, well under the threshold for a traffic impact study. But if the boards do insist on seeing something of that nature, I could speak with the developers, and I'm sure they could provide.
Thank you. Number 13, Part B, the question is, will the proposed action physically alter or encroach into any existing wetland or water body? And that was not answered, either yes or no. So I was just curious about that.
It will not encroach into any wetlands. It will impact a floodplain that is not technically a water body. But again, like I said in my presentation, any impacts to the floodplain areas will be mitigated with compensatory storage in other areas on site, as to not cause any negative issues to the floodplain.
Sure, I was just curious as to why that specific question was not answered.
Yeah,
yes,
I apologize.
Either yes or no.
Yeah, I apologize. It was prepared by others, so
okay.
It's not an excuse. I should have reviewed it before it went in, but I think in future submissions to the planning board, we can send in a supplemented environmental assessment form, which has more detail on it.
Thanks. Number 17, it says there's two parts, A and B. Will the proposed action create stormwater discharge either from the point or non-point sources? And then part A, question A, 17A is, will stormwater discharges flow to adjacent properties? And part B is, will stormwater discharges be directed to establish conveyance systems, runoff, or storm drains? And ironically, none of those questions were answered either.
Yeah,
and I know that the wetlands is a pretty significant issue to, assuming the board, but also to the neighbors. So I was just wondering why that was just not even addressed.
I apologize. Again, I think it was so early in the concept phase when this was submitted. I think whoever prepared this didn't have the answer. But I can state that predominantly the drainage does flow from south to north, and the plan for this project is going to have a stormwater management facility on the north side of the site and discharge to the existing culvert that goes under 104 and continues north.
Sure, and then number...
John, before you, because I don't want Mr. Whitcomb's arm to be stuck, but I should have said this earlier, and it's that...
I'm sorry, I didn't know this.
The only really because of the way it's videotaped and all that, you really can't speak from the crowd, that's why we have the
I'd be
podium time.
willing to go back up.
So, I just want to have you make sure that, and I appreciate, you know, the manners of having the hand up, but you can put it back down, we're gonna keep on going.
Okay,
We're-
when
we're
he's
right
done,
now,
will I
we're
have-
closed down to the 5 minutes on the podium, and now we're to the town board doing a Q&A with the developers that's here.
I understand that. We'll have an opportunity later on.
Let's keep going here, okay?
Okay.
All right. John, your next question.
Thanks. Similar question to number 18, does the proposed action include construction or other activities that will result in the impoundment of water or other liquids? That wasn't answered either, but I'm assuming it.
It will be a
Same
stormwater
reason,
pond,
correct?
yeah. Again, I apologize, when this was submitted, it was more towards the special use permit of the allowable use, and I know the concept plan had not been advanced to the point where some of these questions could have been answered by who prepared it, but that's our next step, is to really dive into all the details, meet all the requirements of the town and the state, and present that to the town and the town engineer and town staff so they can review and we can work through that technical process.
Sure. Thank you. So, Mike, I'm just gonna, is it okay if I make some comments now? Just at this point? Okay. So, I read the code 350-17. Josh, thank you for sending it out, Josh, and also preparing your statement that I'm assuming everybody got in the audience. So, in reading through the code, I went through and I highlighted some areas, sentences that I thought were pretty pertinent to what was being presented. And the first sentence in the code is what I had highlighted. And it reads this is what it reads. The intent in creating this district is to accommodate existing residential uses. The next sentence that I highlighted was new commercial development shall employ architectural styling and detail that is consistent with the residential nature of the surrounding area. And the next I highlighted was multiple family dwellings are also appropriate in conjunction with a limited range of first floor commercial uses on lots which do not meet development standards for low or medium intensity commercial uses. Now, Part A, permitted uses, number 5 is mini storage, self-storage facilities. And in my opinion, this is not mini storage at all. It does not conform with the neighborhood at all as far as the architecture goes. There's going to be a number of variances that are going to be required for this particular development and use. I'm in agreement with a great deal of people that have commented, and I don't believe that this project follows the intention or language of this 3050-17 low intensity commercial district. And I feel strongly that there's so many variances and special use permits that are going to be required. I'm of the opinion and position to take no action on this at all. That's my comments.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to propose a motion. The town board take no action on this application.
Second.
Can I make, before, I was gonna ask Charlie to just give a little bit more legal, he was a lawyer. Elaborate on what take no action means, Charlie.
Well, take no action means that there's not going to be a referral, there's not a referral with either comment or orders or request for modification, nor is there any further instructions to the applicant. So no action would be nothing, basically.
Okay.
What's their next step?
And that's a wonderful question from the crowd that people watching on TV couldn't hear. Somebody from the crowd said, what would be their next step? And that's my concern about the no action, is that then okay, we're gone, and what do they do? We've given them no guidance.
Well,
all right?
that's.
Now, I will say this, and we're gonna get to the motion in a second. And Bill, I appreciate that you made the motion. Jenny has not gotten a chance to ask any questions, nor has she made any comments. John did, all right? Patty has not made any comments or asked any questions. I think, Bill, you've made your statement. You don't need to ask any questions or comments. I'm assuming because you made the motion. So, if you don't mind, Jenny and Patty, can I go first with a very succinct, 60 seconds or less comment? You ready? Time. As people have gotten to know me over the last 3 years, I live by the sword, I die by the sword of my management style. I do not want to be dictatorial, so I collaborate and I let the department heads do their job. Well, I let the zoning board of appeals and I let the planning board do their job. And if you didn't discern from that one page that there is a lot of work and a lot of digging in that the planning board would do through sketch plans and through preliminary or whatever it's called, approvals and final approvals and zoning board. And Gail, you said the CEA factory, who ended up shooting that down? The ZBA. Let them do their job. That's my mode of operandi. All right? So when I look at this, like I said, I'm trying to balance the emotion of 10 people coming in that are neighbors, okay? But I'm also trying to factor in that the zoning board and the planning board, they're going to do a way more deeper dive than even Councilman Cahill, who's pretty darn good, huh? It was pretty impressive when he rattled off all the things that he looked at on that. I can assure you that the zoning board and the planning board will do a deeper dive. If they go through all that, and maybe they give them guidance on what to truncate it down to 3 stories. I know I'm over 60 seconds, all right? And I don't care. Maybe they tell them these things. Maybe they counsel them on the water, the 20% coverage, all this. We do a no action. We gave them nothing. And we also decided that we don't need a zoning board and a planning board because we are omnipotent as a town board. So, we're going to be comments and questions. I'm going to be very honest about this, okay? I would rather see it move along in the process. In fact, Josh, can I ask you something? Most towns of this size, does it start at the town board to refer something like this on to the planning board and zoning board? Not usually. No. Because it ends here. It ends here. You read that, Gail, didn't you? The special use permit would have to be issued by us. And by the way, in the last year, Publishers Parkway, a 20-acre parcel they wanted to do senior housing on, they went through the planning board, they did all this stuff, zoning board, they got back here and we shot it down 5-0. That's when the town board has the last say. I get concerned the town board having the first say. And I have a lot of concerns the town board having the first say when the first say is no action, and as Attorney Genesi just said, we've given no counsel or input to the developer and the engineer. I find that odd, but that's my management style. So, Patty, after my 1 minute, I'll say it metric time, okay? Or Jenny, by all means, you guys can ask as many questions or make the comments you want, and then we have a motion out there. And we have a second to that motion. So we have 2 votes right now for no action. Patty or Jenny, the floor is yours.
So I think that Councilman Abbott and I might be in a unique position in that 13 years ago, we were both sitting on this board when it came to us for a reason. So we, like many of the residents who've come up to speak tonight, have the same history with it as you do. I would disagree with the supervisor in that we've given the developers no guidance. I think they've probably heard an earful of guidance tonight, perhaps not from us, but from everyone who lives near this project. I have concerns with it as well. It does not meet my concept of mini storage. I also noted in the application, I heard a lot of people talking about a 24-hour facility. I do see that it's, at least the hours of operation you presented are not 24 hours. So I just want to give you that. I get that. I have all the same concerns that all the residents do, and my concern with sending this on to the planning board is that they're going to get so far down the road, much like it did with the property on Publishers Parkway. And we're going to go through that whole process and come back to us. And I will tell you that before I could approve a special use permit, I'd have to see major modifications to this project. So I am giving you some guidance from where I'm sitting and my feelings on this.
That's good.
I also want to add just one more thing if I could. As I looked at this and I looked at the entire application and I gave it some thought back to the 13 years ago when we did rezone this, my concern is if we go too much farther down the road and there are any variances granted for this, we're just diluting what we did 13 years ago. And I think we just keep making concessions to the point where it doesn't mean anything anymore. And I'm
She kept it in a minute.
No,
Jenny?
well, excuse me. Well, anyway, I'm honored and I'm privileged to be up here and to be the voice of all of you. And I deeply thank you for every single one of you to come here and give us your input. As a town board here, you know, we all trying to do our best to do what's best for our community, what's best for our constituents. We're not doing it for ourselves, you know. Like I said, I'm honored to be here and to represent you. And I thank you, you know, for your presentation and everything. But as where I'm standing, yeah, we need more time. We need, you know, to see more before we can make a decision on something that affects our community the way that you all present yourself. And right now, I guess I'm kind of agree with, you know, Joe and Patty and John. And I'm sorry, Tom, I mean, you have a great,
You don't have to be sorry about anything.
great
This is
ideas too, but.
The greatest country in the world because we have different things.
And that's, and I know I've pointed this out before, and I'm gonna point it out again. Some of these people have not been at previous board meetings. But this, in my opinion, this board is unique in that we have open discussions and we don't always agree. And that's been on display a number of times. And believe me, I've been to enough board meetings, whether it's school board meetings, village board meetings, where you won't see an open discussion on a topic, even as controversial as this may or may not be, but the open discussion that you see here tonight is something that's unique and based upon my history of going to board meetings. And I'm proud of all these board members, and I'm proud to be a part of this board for that one reason, is that we do have these debates and discussions, and they're not taking place, you know, behind the scenes. We're having the discussion open, which is the way it should be upon listening to the input that we've received from our residents and from the developer. And it's good. I love seeing this. I really do. And I appreciate the participation today, too.
So, take two. You want to do it again?
I believe that this
I thought you were going to make the
should be a
motion.
motion to take no action.
Okay.
Second.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.
Councilman Cahill?
Aye.
Councilwoman Wynn? Aye. Councilwoman Conley?
Aye.
Supervisor Serrano?
I don't make friends, so I let name. For the reasons I gave.
Motion passes.
Yes, 4-1. Not a good politician, I'm not sure. I could just go 5-6. You know what? This isn't for me. But I said what I said. And one thing you'll notice I didn't say tonight, did you hear what I said I thought of the project? I was taught when I got in this position, and Mr. Kashadi's back there. We're not supposed to influence the zoning board of appeals or the planning board, right?
Never have.
So I'm not going to talk about what I think of this project.
Never have.
Because if it ever comes back to me for special use permit, and whatever you guys do with it, if it ever comes back, then I'll talk about what I think about the project. Well, that concludes tonight's meeting. Thanks for participating in.
I'm also a lifelong Webster resident. I work
for U-Haul, and I'm a little upset that nobody would even let us get to the next step to show you guys what we can do.
And I appreciate that, but if you've been sitting here, you might have been behind the beam. The no vote, or the no action, which I said I was concerned gives you no guidance. I think Deputy Supervisor Cataldi summed it up very well, that there has been guidance given. And
We want to work with the neighbors.
I gotta say this, we're done. Okay? So, thank you, everybody. That concludes tonight's board meeting, the public side of it. I'm making a motion to go into executive session. Yeah, I would say this is section 105(1)(D). I made that motion. Inviting, second. And all in favor? Aye. And that's at 8:56. Inviting Josh, Mary, Paul, and Matt, Chet, and Charlie. So, as soon as we clear out the room, we will get this over.
They want to.